What's your first reaction when you hear about the trade?
Well, I was excited to see that Sean Marks wasn't sleeping. The second thing is you're like, oh my God, what did we just get? Like, look at this.
Gets it off in time. And he's got it, baby! Big time Nets win!
The only Net fans you know? The only Nets fans you know? Man. I mean, come on, man. Or are these guys?
Welcome back to Only Net Fans, podcast on Peter. Emergency podcast. Dennis Schroder traded to Golden State. I'm joined for this very special episode by Gary from Nothin But Nets. We're going to break down the trade and maybe a little more trade rumors that's come out. Dennis Schroder is going to Golden State with 1 second rounder for DeAndre Melton, 3 second-round picks, and Reece Beekman. Out of nowhere, this trade comes. You were live streaming. What's your first reaction when you hear about the trade?
Well, I was excited to see that Sean Marks wasn't sleeping. That was the first piece of good news. The second thing is it's good. It's not a fleecing like the Bridges trade where you're like, oh my God, what did we just get? Like, look at this. But this is pretty good value. It's fair market value. I think I was expecting multiple seconds, and that's what we got. We got 3, but had to give away 1. It's good value for him. Schroder's a guy, he's been in the league, I think 12 years, 11 years, and I know he's playing well. But the book's already written on him. Every GM in the league already knows what he is. It's not like his value shot up this year in year 12, right? Like if this was year 3 and he had an explosion, maybe he would have more value. But he's 31 and it's year 12. So GMs know what he is. It's not like his value is going to skyrocket. He's got warts. He's a 6'1". I call him a 2 guard. I know he's been playing the 1, but he's basically a 2 guard. He's a 6'1", 2 guard who's small and can't defend. He is what he is. But he can score and he can create his own shot. So he has value. I think the multiple seconds. And Reece Beekman, I don't know a ton about him. I know he played at Virginia, part of some good teams. I don't know much about him. I don't know what we got there. I'm happy with the value. I think that's fair value.
Since recording, more details of the trade have come out, and I've kind of had some time to look at the players and the draft picks involved, and I just wanted to break it down just a little bit more than me and Gary got to. First question that everybody's saying, how come Dennis Schroder didn't get us a first rounder? Like Gary said, Dennis is a vet. His career numbers are probably the numbers he's going to put up for the rest of the year. I don't think he's going to be able to put up the numbers that he put up in Brooklyn due to usage time. He's not going to be getting the ball in every possession. And something that Gary did not touch on that I'm going to touch on is that the Nets very well could have gotten a first rounder for Dennis Schroder, but they probably would have had to take in another contract, a long-term deal, or higher money. And the Nets don't want to go into the tax line. They're about $2 million away from the tax. And by taking a less value of draft capital, the Nets are able to use DeAnthony Melton's expiring contract, and they don't have to worry about the tax, and they don't have to worry about next year. So, Pete, why did the Nets have to include a second rounder? Originally, I was a little upset that we had to give up a second rounder. We wound up trading the Miami Heat's second rounder that we had that's protected 31 through 37, meaning the pick would have to be 38 and up for us to keep it. That is now sent to Golden State. And like I said, I wasn't really happy about it. But when you see what we got back, I think it makes a little bit more sense. The Nets have 4 first rounders in this draft in 2025. And we have our own second rounder. So that's 5 picks. The picks that they got back, a 2026 second rounder from Atlanta, 2028 second rounder from Atlanta, and a 2029 Golden State second rounder. All those picks are unprotected. In 2026, the Nets actually did not have a second rounder, so now they do. In 2028, they had the Grizzlies second rounder, and now they have Atlanta's as well. And in 2029, they have Dallas, Memphis, and now Golden State. Basically, you took a year that you had a lot of picks. You sent the Heat second rounder over to Golden State. And in return, you got 3 other second rounders in years that you had less picks. I think it's a good way of balancing it out. So this is where I have a little bit of a scoop. The last player included in this trade, Reece Beekman. He's a two-way player, so he was not thrown into this trade for any salary cap purposes. He's a 6'3" point guard, undrafted from Virginia, 3-time All-ACC, 2-time ACC Defensive Player of the Year. He's Virginia's all-time steals leader, 126 games played, 32 minutes a game, He averaged 9 points, 42% from the field, 31% from three, 5 assists. Senior year, 14 points, 6 assists, 2 steals a game. This guy's a grinder, not a great shooter, obviously, but he's a total ball hawk, a Brooklyn Net, Jordy Fernandez type of grinder. So, Pete, why was he included in this trade? Beekman now comes to the Nets when they have a need at point guard with Schroder gone. Sean Marks says he's been scouting Beekman since college. Recently played with Golden State's G League team, the Santa Cruz Warriors. 9 games played, 31 minutes a game, 18 points, 51% from the field, 34% from three, 5 rebounds, 7 assists, almost 3 steals a game. The guy was totally balling out. So the interesting point to all of this is that I've been talking to people behind the scenes about 3 different people tell me the same exact thing. Beekman is going to have a chance to win the point guard role. He's totally past Killian Hayes and Amari Bailey. Killian Hayes in particular has not been doing well in Long Island. He's averaging 12 points a game, 41% from the field, 28% from three, 7 assists a game. He's been a little bit of a disappointment considering. So Beekman has actually jumped them on the depth chart. He's going to have a real shot at being a starter and actually holding the point guard position. Overall, I give the trade a B plus, I guess. You got the draft picks. This is what Gary said.
Like right now, I'd give the trade a B. It's a good trade. Like I'm not complaining. It's not an A. It's not a fleecing. It's not the Bridges trade, but it's good. It's a good trade.
All right, from this point, we're going to jump back to me and Gary talking. Michael Scotto just tweeted out recently, the Nets are still looking for deals for CJ and Dorian Finney-Smith. My prediction, Dorian Finney-Smith gets moved in a very similar deal, probably 2 to 3 second rounders. CJ, I don't know if he's going to get traded. I think that's going to be a lot harder. What do you think?
I think they're both going to get traded. And I think we agree on Dorian Finney-Smith. I think the value is going to be similar to this. You know, I think whether or not teams think that Dorian Finney-Smith is going to opt into his contract next year or opt out, which is like to me a 50-50 thing. I have no idea. Like that's a flip of the coin to me whether he's going to opt in or out. I hear a lot of reports he's going to opt out, but what if he gets traded to a team he likes? Doesn't that change things for him? Like what if he gets traded to Dallas or a team that he wants to be on? That may change his thinking. I think, but you're right. I think multiple twos and probably a little bit higher end prospect, you know, like Jet Howard is a guy that keeps coming to my mind. Like Jet Howard and two, that level prospect, a guy that you've got a little burn where there's a little bit more potential than this. But I think that's what you're looking at for Dorian Finney-Smith with a couple of twos, which is fine. You know, mostly it's getting something so you don't lose Dorian Finney-Smith. Because if Dorian Finney-Smith is on the Nets next year, he's opting out of that contract. And then you lose him for nothing. If he's on a contender, if he's on the Mavericks or he's on a team that he wants to be on, if he goes to Denver or wherever, I mean, Oklahoma City, maybe he stays. Maybe he says, all right, you know, $16 million and a chance to win a championship, that's worth me staying here. It's not worth me staying in Brooklyn. So I think if teams think that they can keep Finney-Smith for another year and he's more than just a rental, they get him for a year and a half, I think that adds value for him. I disagree with you on Cam Johnson. This free agency coming up is not great, and there's not a ton of players that are going to be available outside of Jimmy Butler, you would think, at this trade deadline. So Cam Johnson, outside of Jimmy Butler, probably is the best player that you expect to be traded at the deadline. So I think, and I hated Marks for not trading him before the season started. I said it was a half-ass tank. If you wanted a tank, Cam Johnson and DFS had to go before the season started. And they were both here. He may pull a rabbit out of his hat here and get more value for Cam because there's not much other guys that you could trade for. Cam Johnson, whatever I think of him, did perform well in a championship run where they lost in the finals. He was a rotational guy there. He played a lot of minutes. He played good defense. He was productive offensively deep into the playoffs. So there might be teams that value him. And then if there's 3 teams that value him, you can kind of get what you want because there's not a lot of other players to go around. So I think I would agree with you 100% on DFS and Cam Johnson. I think they're going to trade. I think you're going to be surprised with exactly what they get for him.
We forget his age. The older you get, the less of a chance you're going to get a longer term deal. I think what is he, like 30 or 31? Would you rather sign a 2-year deal for I don't know, like 35 million plus a club option, or get 1 year of like, I don't know, 19? I don't have the exact numbers in front of me, just making this up. At this age, he probably has maybe one more good contract in him before he starts becoming the 35-year-old vets minimum guy, right? I think he wants to score one last big contract for his family. I really thought he was going to opt in before the year. I said that over and over. I had someone talk to me and said, you know what? You're not thinking about his age. You're not thinking about he's probably going to get more money in the open market. And let's face it, agents, they talk to teams all the time. Dorian Finney-Smith will know his market before the season ends. If there's no market, he opts in. There's probably going to be a lot of suitors for him. I think he opts out, and that's where we differ on that. But we both agree, probably 2 to 3 second rounders. CJ, it's so tough because of the CBA. Certain teams are probably out of the running for him because of where they are in the apron. And then you have to match contracts. And then do they have the draft capital? You're going to need a third team, maybe even a fourth, depending on, what teams you're looking at. After this season, you have more suitors and teams have more draft capital to work with. NBA teams can only trade up to 7 years ahead of time. When the season ends, they could move to that next year. So you'll have more teams with more draft capital and all these contracts that are going to expire from this season. So I think he gets moved in the offseason if he gets moved.
I look at a team like Memphis. I think Memphis has a real chance to compete. Memphis would have Marcus Smart, whose contract almost matches, but it's a year short. It's 21 and change next year, 21 million and change. And they have a first rounder. I think you make the contracts work. You add in another salary filler to match Cam Johnson's money. I think you can get something like that. Marcus Smart has not worked out in Memphis. He's still a good player. I don't know what the Nets would do with him, if they would look to trade him, or if they would look to keep him or whatever. But I think it's something like that where you get a salary dump and a one is what we're going to get for Cam Johnson. People value Cam Johnson. What I want to say about Dorian Finney-Smith is you're right, his age. But this is how I value a player. In the playoffs, the final 5 minutes of the game, is that guy on the court? And for most teams, Dorian Finney-Smith, because of the way that he can defend, like you said, basically 1 through 5, and he can shoot the three well enough, Dorian Finney-Smith is on the court. Cam Johnson is also on the court for a lot of teams. So if I have to give up a first rounder for that, and I have 2 more years of him, and I think I'm competing, and I'm getting a guy that's going to be on the court in crunch time, I'm going to trade a first-round pick for him. Like, with DFS, I don't know how much longer I have him, so I can't give you a first-rounder. Cam Johnson, I know I have him for this playoff run and the next 2. So if I'm a team like Denver or Memphis, and in my head, I'm going to be in the running every year, I will give up a first-rounder.
Gary, you know what the issue is with this? You're not wrong with your assessment. It's that which teams have the contracts that the Nets want in return, plus have that draft capital. Because if you do get a third team involved, that eats into the Nets' return. Because you're basically, someone has to pay that third team to get involved. They're not going to take in a bad contract for no reason. Somebody has to pay for that. It has to work with the CBA. And if you're in some of these brackets, as far as tax aprons, you may not even be able to pull the deal off, depending, how your numbers work out. I think that's where we differ.
I think there are teams, obviously the market shrinks, right? But I think Memphis is one. I think the Lakers have an outside chance. I'll take D'Lo's contract. I'll buy out D'Lo, and you'll throw me. They don't have a pick for a while till like 2029, I think, the Lakers. But I'll take that, and I'll buy out D'Lo's contract. Or could I trade D'Lo at the deadline? Maybe I could. I mean, he's a really bad playoff player, so maybe not. But worst case scenario is I have an expiring deal in D'Lo if I can't get anything for him. And I'll sell a couple more tickets because, like, guys like me, I want to wear my D'Lo jersey again, right? Like, he's a fan favorite. I think the Lakers make sense, and I think Memphis makes sense. I don't think you need to bring in a third team in those two scenarios.
Like you said, it's the Lakers' first rounder is so far out. Do I want something like that when if we get a third team involved, I can get a pick sooner? I don't know. We'll see what happens. I don't think a deal for both of those guys happen until at least a couple weeks from now. I would not be shocked to see them go before the deadline. That's going to be something to look at. Any plugs you want to throw out there before we finish?
I appreciate you having me on, Pete. It's always a pleasure. Follow me on YouTube at Nothin But Nets. I try to go live the day after every game. I also do videos. I'll do a video on Beekman. Try to break down him. I'll watch some tape on him. Try to get you a video on that. But that's Nothin in the apostrophe, Nothin But Nets on YouTube. Appreciate you having me on, Pete.
All right, guys. If you enjoyed the video, you can check out regular episodes, a lot longer than this one. Check that out. You know where to check it. You're watching it right now. Net fans, you know. You can also follow me on Twitter at Net fans, you know. Have a great day. Have a great night. And let's go Nets. We're out.